7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Welcome into the next edition of the Vegas Squares podcast. We are here off of another wild weekend in the NFL, and the Monday Night Football game didn't go my way, but it did go everybody else's way, Spike's, Tony's, and Sonny's, so it sounds like I'm going to lose a point in our contest there. Nevertheless, this is our Thursday show here on 12 Ounce Sports Radio. If you are listening on 12 Ounce, we definitely appreciate it. We want to thank them as one of our sponsors for putting us on 4 times a week, every Monday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. Also want to thank our sponsors, VGK Pop Sockets and ChaiPoker.com. With me, I got Tony and Tony, one in the studio, one on the phone. Let's start with Token Tony. He decided to wake up late and didn't want to be a part of this festivities here inside the studio. What's up, Token?
Not much. I actually just dropped Sonny off at the airport, and then made my way back to the apartment and on the phone with you goons. So
yeah, Sonny's leaving back to Canada. Send that motherfucker out of here since he beat me last week.
Yeah, some Canadian that doesn't know too much about.
Yeah, Canadian knows nothing about football. Beats me in picks. Real great. And then we've got Tony Johnson, who you guys haven't heard from for a couple weeks. He's been a world traveler. I think he went all the way to Colorado.
Yeah, long distance, right? But
how was your holiday?
It was excellent. Good to be back. I'm well fed finally, and good to go.
Yeah. Don't get too well fed. You'll start looking like me.
There's always a goal.
This isn't it. Trust me. This bee used to look a lot smaller on my chest. Anyways, well, we appreciate you tuning in, whether you're listening on, again, 12 Ounce Sports Radio, or you're listening to our podcast on VegasSquares.com. You can catch all of our podcasts there, from episode 1 all the way to all of our current episodes, whether it's Picks and Chatter, what we qualify as episodes, or even our snippets, VegasSquares.com. You can catch us on Twitter. Our picks are usually on Twitter, and usually our podcasts are linked on Twitter at Vegas Squares. A lot to talk about today. Let's kind of jump into it. Guy we talked about a couple weeks ago on one of our Picks and Chatter podcasts, Jeff Brom. He's a Louisville guy. Token, you talked about this. Big-time Louisville guy. Went to Louisville this week to kind of discuss the job, and then decided to stay at Purdue. From what I understand, Purdue sweetened the pot by upping Brom's annual salary to $6 million a year. $6 million a year, holy crap, for a guy at Purdue.
Huge increase. Yeah, he went from like 3.2 to 6.
I know.
It's amazing.
But Token, Did you see this one coming? A guy who, last year we looked at Scott Frost. I don't know, if UCF made an attempt to increase Frost's salary, but most of the guys, when it's their alma mater calling, they really don't think twice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for Brom it was just too good of a deal to turn around, and I think he just likes the chances with the Boilermakers moving forward, and thinks he can do something with the offensive side of the ball, as well as get somebody in there that can work with that defense.
Yeah, and Tony, you look at this, you have just a dumpster fire at Louisville. We started the year, they played Alabama, it was supposed to be a game, and every week since, it feels like they've been getting worse and worse. But Brom, like I said, it's an alma mater kind of thing. It's really hard to say, even with Purdue up in the salary. You're going to get to be put in the ACC, which, other than Clemson, is a wide open conference at this point. Are you shocked at staying at Purdue? Because at the Big Ten level, Purdue's not. While he's gotten good recruits like Rondale Moore, Purdue's not usually the go-to spot for big-time Big Ten recruits.
For sure. I am surprised. I really thought for sure that after they fired Petrino, he would move over, especially as the losing streak kind of continued after the Ohio State loss, where Purdue kind of got back to reality almost, and barely got into a bowl game. But I think there were two things that ended up being big that he probably thought about more so than anything. Number one, I think that we have to continue to talk about the increase in salary. So to get a almost 100% raise and doing the same job essentially is
not too
immense.
shabby.
Yeah, it's not too shabby. So I mean, I know we don't like to say it's all about the love and everything else like that, but I think the money really does matter here, and he's paid like a big-time Power 5 coach, which he's shown so far to be one of those coaches. He's done a really nice job, as you said, in a tough spot. I think the second thing, you brought up the conference in the ACC, and I totally agree. It's wide open, but I actually feel the Big Ten West, where he's at, is also relatively wide open. I think he sees the same thing. And nobody wants to be in the East right now. It's a murderer's row of coaches.
You got Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan.
Yeah, and Maryland can get big-time recruiting.
And D'Antonio can have Michigan State looking pretty good, too.
Exactly. So it's a very tough spot there, whereas I think the Big Ten West is relatively wide open. I mean, clearly you're always going to have Iowa and Wisconsin probably being solid teams as long as they're led by the same management crew and coaches. But I do think that these are, and we've seen it this year, that these teams, are fallible. I mean, they can struggle at times and then get too one-dimensional, and that's when the struggles really can show, when you have these great dynamic coaches on all levels. And as we've talked about with Scott Frost being added in and PJ Fleck, who are, both two really, really good young coaches, I think that side of the conference is going to be in turmoil back and forth, depending on who has a good run and who may have a good season. And I think Brom wants to be a part of this. It's really a great up and coming part of the conference.
Yeah, I mean, he was a quarterback in the mid early 90s, something like that. Sure. So it's been and is Brian Brom his brother?
Yes, younger brother.
Yeah, it is
on the staff at
because I always thought. Yeah. Because when I think of Louisville and I think of Brom, I always think of Brian Brom. But, I mean, you're talking about early 90s quarterbacks. That's, before me. I mean, I was alive, but I wasn't I wasn't watching college football back then. But, yeah, I mean, it's just, to stay at Purdue, you talk about being a head-scratcher, but you're right. When someone signs your checks and offers you double of what you were making the year before, which actually was... like you said, it was $3.3 million he made last year, and he's getting $6 million annual. So basically, like you said, 100% increase. The question is how much more expectation now becomes of Brom and his staff now that say, okay, look, we had to do what we could to keep you here, but the expectations of a $6 million coach are not to finish. What was their record this year? Probably somewhere around 500. Yeah, I'll say 6-6 in the Big Ten West. That's not a $6 million coach's expected value at the end of the season, or at the end of, at the end of the season. You're not supposed to be 6-6. You're supposed to be competing for this, which, by all accounts, you could say they were in competition. Remember, like a couple weeks ago when we talked about it on Picks and Chatter. But I mean, you should be in competition with one loss, maybe two, not sitting here going, oh god.
Yeah, 6-6 and barely scraping out some wins where you should be blowing out teams almost.
Yeah, I mean, everybody who follows it on a surface level is going to say, yeah, he absolutely deserves this. He beat Ohio State by 29 points. But if you dig a little bit deeper, I mean, 6-6, like you said, is not going to make the board feel good about their commitment to him. Do you think he's going to be trending upward in this spot, or is he going to be kind of even keel? You talked about the Big Ten West being mediocre, I guess you could say, at least right now. Wisconsin and Iowa aren't always this down, quote unquote. So to think that your expectations are to play just a slight bit better than they are now, I think would be fool's gold at that point. I think your expectation for Brom and getting him more resources to the program, including better players. I mean, Rondale Moore, if they can start getting guys like that on a continuous basis, then you have a chance to compete in the Big Ten West. But I don't think being able to compete early November, quote unquote, compete in the Big Ten West is what exactly the Purdue brass are looking for at this point.
Yeah, I mean, in conference they were 5-4. I mean, all of the teams, even on the bottom of the slate of the West, are looking to improve for sure, especially with Nebraska coming up with Scott Frost. And
well, there's another one I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, doing pretty well in that whole conference. And, they ended up 4-8, which was pretty impressive for their expectations.
Yeah, I mean, losing to, Minnesota the way they did, they were 10.5-point favorites and got beat by 30. I mean, that's not stuff that's supposed to be happening currently. Like you said, we talked about early November, they were in competition for the Big Ten title, and then it was like they just kind of went in the other direction. You can't lose. The Wisconsin game, I see that as 47-44. If you have games like that with Wisconsin, when, Wisconsin is who they are, other years, I could see that being okay. But, Wisconsin was down this year. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think they started Cone that game, too.
They did.
Started as true freshman
That's
that
right.
game.
Yep.
And still beat you. So
yeah.
It's I don't want to, downplay Jeff Brom's success.
Right.
I mean, I use that in air quotes because 6-6 to me is not success. But, congratulations to him. I still think maybe he should have gone because I don't know if there's much more you can do with Purdue because how many coaches have come in there since who was the guy who coached Breeze?
Joe Tiller?
Joe Tiller. I mean, how many guys have come in there since that? And even him, they were just a kind of a middling Big Ten West program.
He was an offensive innovator, though. I think with some of the teams that he had and those wide open offenses that no one had ever seen in the Big Ten, he was a really, really impressive coach. I think people more like Joe for what he was personality-wise and what he developed in players. There's a lot of, almost everyone has good things to say about Joe Tiller.
No, I'm not saying anything bad about him. I'm just saying that, you look at Purdue football.
Right.
I'm not going to go down in the record books. Do they have a Big Ten West title? I'm sure they do, but it can't be within the last decade or so.
Yeah, I don't know. Since they changed all that, since they moved the conferences around and created these two sides, I don't think they do. They haven't. They've only. I think they won the Big Ten maybe once. They went to one Rose Bowl, I think, under Tiller's resume. But as you said, it's been pretty weak.
Yeah. So I mean, hopefully, like you said, if you can pull Purdue around to be a perennial juggernaut, you're gonna be a god, I guess. So.
It seems really difficult, though. I mean, it does. Just looking at, again, as we've talked about, looking at all these coaches. I mean, you can't sleep on any of these guys, and even Illinois is recruiting really well. I know they're still not really winning games, but they just re-upped Lovie Smith for another couple of years. And while that's controversial and kind of odd to look at, he is recruiting extremely well.
Well, and even if the recruits don't pan out, or if you start getting recruiting battles with Illinois, Indiana, Rutgers, Maryland, and they take the players that you were targeting.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the old fantasy football notion. Why do you take that third quarterback? You don't need him on your team,
right.
But I'm keeping him off of your team.
It's for sure. It's for sure true. And I think we shouldn't look past Rondale Moore being one of the great recruits they've had recently. He is from the same high school as Jeff Brom, and there was a strong connection there.
So
I think that might be a bit of a one-off,
of a
sort of
long
outlier.
shot, yeah.
Again, you still have to get the guy, and I understand that's all good and well, but I do think this was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction by Purdue, and I am surprised they approved this big of a salary. It really, as you said, it is shocking. We paid this much money at Purdue, and I'm with you guys. I think for the most part that I think this is going to be a very very strong and competitive part of the conference, and I don't really see any of these great coaches, and there are many great coaches in this conference emerging. I think there's just too much depth and too much firepower here.
It's true.
Yeah, you're right about that. And I think Purdue's looking more on the offensive side of the ball with Brom moving forward too, being an ex-quarterback and knowing that system pretty well. So,
well, he's definitely, obviously he's in the good graces now, but that leash is going to get tighter and tighter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's move on. I know you guys are dying to talk about punters because that's what we do here on the show.
We're Spike when we need him.
Yeah, exactly. But I will say this. This was a pretty cool story to come out, not for the guy, because I don't know really what's going on with him after the game. I'm sure pure adrenaline probably got him through this. But apparently all Big 12 punter for Baylor, Drew, I'm going to butcher his name, Galitz, tore his ACL in warm-ups before the Texas Tech game. That they actually won 35-24. And while that's not, outrageous, things can happen in warm-ups, not the craziest thing. But he still punted, and punted 3 times on a torn ACL.
Yeah. I wonder with his torn ACL if it was on his landing leg or his kicking leg. Because if it was his landing leg, I mean, that's very tough to play on.
I would say even both, but you're right. The plant leg is to have a torn ACL. It doesn't say which one. Yeah, you're right.
I didn't catch that either. Yeah, which one?
I've been reading a few. Different.
I would
articles.
do more the kicking leg than the landing leg, but I mean,
I would believe since this story came out, but either way, to me that's just crazy. Whether you used your foot to kick it or whether you used your planting leg to plant and then kick it. Either way, torn left ACL. While you can still semi-walk on it, that can't feel good.
I wouldn't think so.
No.
And according to Gallitz, he said that when they wanted to take him back to the tent, he said, "Nope, it's." I guess he's a senior. He said, "Nope, I'm playing. This is our last game."
Wow.
He also had a long of 54 that game.
I was going to say, yeah, he averaged 41 yards. That's not bad.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive, especially with a torn ACL, let alone for a regular college punter.
I mean, a 54-yard punt for a college punter is amazing, and then to do it like that, yeah, you're right. That's pretty crazy. Let's move on. Stay in college football here a little bit. Talk about Paul Johnson, who I know that's not national spotlight. They're not in a championship game, Georgia Tech, and basically does not really have anything to do with what's going to be going on this weekend. But three-time ACC Coach of the Year, 61 years old, Paul Johnson is the Georgia Tech's actually second winningest coach of all time in Georgia Tech history, is going to be stepping down. I know that doesn't mean much in the scheme of things right now, but we're talking about a team that's been running the triple option for 11 years at Georgia Tech. I know that the triple option exists in other places, but I mean, you always knew the staple, Tony, was Georgia Tech runs the option. Barely. Even when they had Calvin Johnson, they barely threw the football. What do you think about this, and what do you think about going forward about us actually probably seeing a different offense now in Atlanta?
I don't think there's any doubt that there'll be an offensive change. I'm not that. From what I understand, and from what I have a friend who's a Georgia Tech grad, and they all do seem to really love this style of offense. And I think we mentioned with Joe Tiller, they're a huge fan of Paul Johnson himself, who seems to be a really main player in the community and a good guy. But I just can't see or can't fathom this offense being able to keep up with the big time offenses that they're going to be facing as the years go on, and as these wide open type of schemes and spreads continue to show up. When you get behind in games in triple option, it's very difficult to come back, and it's very difficult to score quickly. I mean, the offense is designed to hold the ball and to not score quickly. So to me, it doesn't really work if you're trying to play for championships and titles. Yes, you're going to get in some games where teams that are not prepared, and you're going to be able to stomp on some guys that are just ill prepared to face a team like this. So they're going to get a chunk of wins on a yearly basis because of that. But I think to compete at the top level and to be a championship caliber team, and I assume that Georgia Tech certainly wants to do this, I don't think this offense can work in the Power 5 for the most part. If we took the best conference that it might be suitable for, probably the Pac-12. Probably, I've thought about this before, but I still think
triple
that
option?
Yes, I still think that overall in the Power 5, it's actually not capable to win in a championship caliber form. And the reason I say the Pac-12 is we've seen Chris Peterson and Washington sort of play an old school NFL style way on both offense and defense, and it's amazing to me, having watched it work for so long. And he coaches in a very strict disciplinary sort of pod-like manner, where you see a lot in the upper level of the NFL too. So I think that it's possible. Maybe in some places you can win a bunch of games, but I can't see it competing at the championship level. So my guess is they'll go a totally different direction. And who knows where they'll go.
I mean, you're right. Paul Johnson went 189 and 98 as a coach. Won over 100 games with Navy. He was the one before. I'm going to butcher this name. Niumatalolo. He was the one who put Navy on the map before Niumatalolo even came in. And then that turned him into a hot commodity. Georgia.
And Jeff Monken and Army also worked under him too.
Yeah, you're right.
So, I mean, it's very impressive. Very impressive.
Yeah, I would say you haven't seen a successful triple option as far as national title contender since Nebraska.
Yeah.
Let's say Nebraska in 01 or 2000, whenever that was, with Eric Crouch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But like he talked about, I mean, if you want to be, Token, a perennial ACC contender, which I believe Georgia Tech hasn't been that in almost a decade. They won the ACC title in 2009. Achieved a national ranking of 7 at the end of the season, and then they were 11-3, and they won an Orange Bowl game in 2009. But here we go, 10 years of. I can't remember the last time Georgia Tech was really good.
Like you said, pretty much 09, and then went down from there. Paul Johnson's still a very good coach, and kind of sad for the program to see him go, but it's understandable. He wants to spend time with family, and
He's pretty old, too.
Wants the break, yeah.
He averaged 8 wins a season. That's not terrible for Georgia Tech football.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely is.
I don't remember the last time they beat Georgia either, so I'm not saying that they were. Do you think they were pushing him out?
I don't know. It's tough. Possibly there were some rumblings in the background, but the problem is they extended him last year for 2 more seasons through 2022. So I would lean towards maybe not, but I think probably some changes were wanted, and he's a pretty hard-headed guy that I don't think really wanted to do a whole lot. So possible, but I don't know. Again, from what I understand, and one of my friends was relatively close to the program, and he says there's a lot of support for Paul Johnson. This was a few years ago, but a lot of support for Paul Johnson. So I'm not sure. I don't know. My guess is he'll come back and coach again somewhere else. Would be my
Couple
guess.
years.
Yeah,
Maybe
just by the way he said it afterwards, and that he says he's not necessarily done coaching, wants to spend time with his family. We've heard that a lot before from other coaches. And my guess is he'll come back in a maybe not a Power 5 team. Maybe it'll be a high-end group of 5 type of team, and this offense will thrive again, would be my guess.
Yeah, maybe UCF will be looking for a coach by then. God, could you imagine UCF? UCF going from spread formation aired out to triple option.
I hope they don't. I enjoyed how it is now.
I hope they don't either.
Or maybe like UNLV or something like that.
Oh, boy. Bring them out here.
Possible. It's possible.
Yeah, you never know. All right, let's move to the NFL here because there's some big-name quarterbacks trending in different directions here right now. We'll start with the one trending down. And it was announced earlier this week that Blake Bortles was going to be benched in favor of Cody Kessler. Well, I don't want to completely say that the Blake Bortles experience is over, but can't feel good when your coach believes Cody Kessler gives your team the best chance to win against Indianapolis at home on this Sunday.
Yeah, for sure. And I think he also he fired the offensive coordinator, too.
Yeah, Nate Hackett.
Yeah, so, this is, I think, a full-scale sort of cleaning here. And it's at the end of the season, and these guys are clearly, obviously, done. So my guess is, I don't know how much to read into this, but clearly, Doug Marrone's just kind of, I think, going to see what he has, with a few guys. Maybe there's a chance that there might be something here with Cody Kessler. I don't really think anybody believes that. He may not believe that either, but there's really no reason to not give some time and opportunity to other players and other coaches and other guys that might be better than his previous offensive coordinator. So I do think that there's some merit there in that regard. Marrone seems like he's got his head pretty well on straight. Seems like a pretty smart coach, but and is having a really tough season. But I don't know. I don't know what to expect. As I told you, Aaron, before, I didn't necessarily believe you when you had said many weeks ago now that you didn't think Bortles was a starting NFL quarterback. But 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks after you said that, I definitely went on that wagon, and I feel that way now.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's, like you said, play calling schemes. There's a lot of different franchises out there that take their quarterback's strengths and build around them versus trying to formulate their quarterback into their offensive style. You have Sean McVay who makes Jared Goff. What's Jared Goff's strength? He's deadly accurate, apparently, between 15 and 50 yards. So what do? They go out and get Robert Woods. They get Brandon Cooks, all those guys that you can hit intermediate long routes. You have Pat Mahomes. What's he good at? improvising, scrambling on his feet. He needs a bunch of different weapons. What do? They go get, well, they had Tyreek Hill. They have Kareem Hunt.
They got Sammy.
They go out and get Sammy Watkins. They have Travis Kelce. So they
and Albert Wilson, who got hurt, but I mean, he's like
Albert
really
Wilson's in Miami.
Oh, what am I talking about?
I don't know.
Okay.
Albert Wilson did get hurt. You're right, but he played for Miami this year. He was in Kansas City last year.
Oh, okay, I'm thinking about Kansas City last year.
But I mean, you have guys like this Prescott, good running game. Prescott doesn't want pressure on him, so you have a good running game and short intermediate receivers. They go get Amari Cooper, who's able to basically do what Des Bryant couldn't, which was separate from a receiver and get open, whereas Des Bryant always wanted the jump ball, and Prescott really wasn't good and accurate at throwing a jump ball. My point being is through all of that is I don't feel like Jacksonville did anything to help Bortles. Now, I put that with a caveat because Leonard Fournette did help Bortles. I think Leonard Fournette's appearance in Jacksonville last year is what led to Jacksonville being what they were. And Leonard Fournette's played, 3 games this year? Correct me if I'm wrong?
Yes, I believe that is right.
So Leonard Fournette is kind of what made Blake Bortles because the pressure, Leonard Fournette's ability to run took so much pressure off of Bortles that when teams were preparing for Fournette, Bortles had a lot more open attempts, and I feel like Bortles played a lot better. Now not having a run game because Yeldon didn't do anything, Hyde didn't do anything, and Fournette can't stay on the field. I'm not blaming. I'm still putting a blame on Blake Bortles, but at the same time, I'm not completely blaming him as to why he's benched. Because you're right, Nathaniel Hackett is another reason why. I don't think Nathaniel Hackett took his strengths and made Bortles a better quarterback by playing to his strengths. I think Nathaniel Hackett said, "Here's my offense. You need to you need to wrap your head around it and be good at it." And that's not the way the NFL is anymore. A lot of these guys aren't fully well-rounded quarterbacks. They do 1 or 2 good things. And you can look at anybody. Pat Mahomes doesn't hold on to the ball well. He's wildly a little more inaccurate when he scrambles. You have Drew Brees, who doesn't have the arm strength anymore, so Sean Payton doesn't call, fly routes anymore. He basically utilizes a lot of screens and utilizes his backs more. I mean, you got guys like Hackett and Marone who aren't adapting to what their quarterback's strengths are. And I think and Bortles, obviously Marone's not going to fire himself. I think Hackett should have been fired, and Bortles is going to be the scapegoat, for lack of a better word. That's too strong of a word in my opinion. But does this mean he never gets to start in Jacksonville again? Or do you think there's a chance that he could get back in there this season or even be in competition next year based on what they do in the offseason?
I believe, in my opinion, that he's probably done for this year, but he gets to start in the beginning of next year unless if they just pick up some incredible starting quarterback or draft one or something, move forward with them. But I think he's the starter game 1 next season regardless.
I think they absolutely have to draft a quarterback. I don't think there's any question about that. It may not be a top-end, top type of pick, but certainly by the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round, I'm sure they'll have a quarterback. I don't.
And maybe that's what they're doing because I think Justin Herbert's supposed to be drafted pretty high. He's apparently the only one of the quarterbacks next year that really have first round potential, I guess you could say.
It's a bad year for quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, you have Drew Lock. He would not be ready, in my opinion, to start week 1 of 2019. Daniel Jones, the guy for Duke. I mean, he's probably not ready to start week 1 of 2019. So the thing is you're right. I mean, you're looking at. I got to imagine that Jacksonville's utilizing Cody Kessler to pretty much punt the season. Because correct me if I'm wrong. I believe they're 3-8 this year.
That is correct. They started 2-0 in their last 9 games. They won an 8 record. So.
And Blake Bortles signed this year in February, a 3-year, $54 million deal. I believe he's on the hook next year for $21 million. So you're paying Blake Bortles basically what you're paying Drew Brees. So, I mean, I got to imagine you're going to at least give him a last-ditch effort to win a starting job. I think next year it may be better. You not only play a last-place schedule next year, which is what they did last year, which is one of the reasons why they won the AFC South. Not only do you do that, you get Leonard Fournette back healthy. Hopefully he can stay healthy. I think Bortles will be in a good spot next year. He'll be in almost the same spot he was in 2017, in my opinion. But as far as the NFL free agent market next year, it's relatively thin. I mean, they could go Tyrod Taylor. I mean, that's probably going to be an option out there. But other than that, there's not much. I mean, Chase Daniel will be a free agent next year. He could be getting a look at potentially a starting position. I don't know. We'll see.
Do they want to pay 2 quarterbacks, though? Because they're already paying one.
Well, you're right. They got to either find a cheap guy or they've got to go in the draft and have him compete with Bortles next year.
That's probably that's my guess what will happen. And as you said, I mean, the advancement of maybe D.D. Westbrook and some of the other younger receivers, you never know. I mean, this team could
Keelan Cole fell off the map, too.
Yeah, he was looking really, really strong.
First couple weeks.
And then,
I don't even think, I don't even ever see him in the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, Teddy Bridgewater will be a guy who you could sign him for $6 to $8 million. I mean, yes, you'll still have $30 million wrapped up in a quarterback, but if you have $30 million wrapped up in a quarterback who can win you games, that doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Jameis Winston may or may not be, depending on the option being picked up. I mean, like I said, as far as I'm going to read you the list here from top to bottom as far as what they made in 2018. This isn't top to bottom as far as how good they are. Tyrod Taylor, Josh McCown, Matt Schaub, Teddy Bridgewater, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Ryan Griffin, Matt Castle, Robert Griffin III, Derek Anderson, Geno Smith, Joe Webb, Mark Sanchez, Brock Osweiler. I mean, it goes lower, but do we really need to? And Colin Kaepernick.
Of course. Got to throw him in.
So I think Blake Bortles you're right. I'd hate to think that he doesn't play another game this year, but I think the only reason Kessler would be staying in the entire year is they're punting at this point.
Makes sense. I mean, there's nothing necessarily to play for. I don't think Kessler will be a total embarrassment. You know, the only, I guess, reason he gets back in the game would be, my guess is if Kessler gets hurt.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I can see that. But other than that, I don't see why you would go back to Bortles here. I mean, it just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense.
Because if you go back to Bortles, he performs well and you become 5-11. What does that do for you?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
That pushes your draft pick back from 4 to 8.
Yep. No, it's tank time. It's like the NBA. Here we are. So
yeah,
that's for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, I kind of wish in the NBA and maybe even the NFL. I understand the NFL. The NFL has more parity, so I can't really hate on the NFL as much. But the NBA and Major League Baseball and stuff, instead of tanking and awarding tanking, I feel like the team that misses the playoffs, the best team that misses the playoffs, should get the first pick.
But then maybe are you keeping the poor teams down for too long? Would be maybe the thought.
I'll play better because the thing is in the NFL, or not the NFL, but the NBA, the poor teams have been down forever now. It seems. I mean, Orlando Magic ever since Dwight left, that was 10 years ago. I mean, Phoenix Suns, when the last time they were good? Steve Nash.
Yeah, those are two pretty prime examples. That's true. Although we've seen Philly rise, we've seen some other smaller teams rise. We saw Golden State rise with a lot of draft picks they built through the draft. So yeah, I mean some of it. Yeah,
Steph and Clay, but they were still. I think Steph was like 7 and Clay was like 13 or 14th as far as the number that they were drafted. I don't know. I'm just saying, the Adam Silver and all these other, GMs, Manfred, have come out and said, I hate the fact that our teams tank, or whether they do or not, or whether the teams don't believe they can win, so they try to lose. Well, incentivize winning, then. Because winning is directly correlated to butts in the seats, which is directly correlated to TV contracts, which is directly correlated to more money in your pocket.
Yeah, they've adjusted the draft lottery the last year or 2 years ago. They adjusted a little bit where you don't get as much of a chance towards the bottom. It's a little bit more even from the bottom teams up to the sort of lower half of the losing teams. So it's not as you have more of a chance if you're a middling team to get a top pick now than you used to. So there's a little bit, it's flatlined a little bit based on what you're saying, but yeah, not all the way.
Let's see, or if you don't want to do reverse order of your standings, just give everybody an equal shot in the lottery.
Yeah, you could do it full equal. Yeah, I mean, you could do something like
that. The thing is if you hate tanking so much, don't incentivize it.
Right.
Say, look, everybody who finishes out of the playoffs is going to have an equal shot.
There are a lot of good...
Or make it like, okay, so you have... or make the difference 0.1 to 1% change.
Right, make it very flat. Yeah, no, there's a lot of people that have said the exact same thing like that. So yeah, no, it makes sense to me.
So yeah, I mean, I just can't sit there and say if you hate tanking so much and you do nothing to incentivize it, because a lot of these teams, the TV contract's so huge, they don't need to be good, especially in baseball and basketball. All right, well. Let's move on to another quarterback that we were talking about. Actually, let's talk about Leonard Fournette, because we talked about him just a second. He's suspended one game for his role in that brawl against the Bills. It seemed weird that he was the only one suspended. Any thoughts on that? Because I feel like Shaq Lawson was just as much of a player in that as Leonard Fournette was, and there were some other guys who decided to throw some hands as well. It just seemed like, why Fournette? Why only penalize your quote-unquote superstar?
I believe the only reason why he got suspended and nobody else did is because he was on the bench for that play.
Okay, that's fair.
But I believe
the action came into the bench. Well, it came over to the corner of the end zone, but it was on the Jaguars' side, correct?
I know. Yeah. I believe both of those should have been suspended. Fournette, I believe, should have gotten two, and the other one should have gotten one to make it more fair. But yeah, it is what it is. And
I don't know. It was just kind of an interesting. It just seemed like weird to me that he was the only one who got suspended in that whole action, because I could have shown you 5 guys that were involved in the or participants, as you will. Not much.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, not much to really say about this. It was just kind of shocked me that he was the only one to be punished in this. And I know how the NFL protects their stars, and maybe Fournette's a star, maybe he's not. But oh nope, I was incorrect. I can see why he was suspended. Now I'd like to change my statement here, if it pleases the court. He was on the sideline, and the action was on the Bills' sideline. He ran across the field and punched him. So I would like to retract all of my statements there.
Okay.
I would like to retract all statements there, so never mind. But how does that affect this weekend's game? I mean, we just talked about Jacksonville punting the season, obviously not having Fournette. I mean, Indianapolis right now is only a 4-point favorite. Any shot right here that, I mean, everybody is just, I mean, the line opened up at 2.5. It's now pushed up to 4. Are we just pounding Indianapolis on the road? It feels like maybe that Jacksonville may have a chance to keep this close. No Fournette, no.
In my mind, no.
Indianapolis just that.
In my mind, Indy's just that good. The only problem I would have with being worrisome about that bet is that they don't know what to expect out of the new quarterback for Jacksonville for the rest of our Kessler.
I mean, I think we've seen enough of Kessler that he's pretty trash. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, the unknown. It just feels like, the line's being pounded up. Obviously, Fournette got suspended. Indianapolis has won, 6 in a row now? 5 in a row now at this point? I don't know. It just feels fishy. I don't know. But Indianapolis, what I'm saying is Indianapolis, with what they've done and with what Jacksonville's done in the last 6 weeks, should be a bigger favorite than 4 points.
It is weird. It's a low line, yeah.
But welcome to the NFL, right?
Yeah, no, I would. It stinks. It stinks bad. It's one of those it doesn't look good, and I would avoid it. Definitely.
All right. Well, speaking of quarterbacks, like we talked about before, Mitch Trubisky is going to sit out another game here against the Giants. Also, a 4-point favorite is Chicago, still with Daniel in there. It opened up at 4 with Trubisky. The line has not moved with Chase Daniel. The total has come down a half a point. But I'm going to leave this for you, Tony, because I think you've been the one on the train saying that Chase Daniel is the better quarterback and gives the team the better chance to win.
Yeah, that was my stance before the season started. I'm actually surprised Daniel has not been given an opportunity anywhere throughout his career yet. I do think he's a very capable quarterback. But that said, it's been impressive to watch Trubisky this season adapt and not only just use his legs, but use them in a better fashion and not take nearly as many hits as he did last season. and just be smarter with the ball in those circumstances. The drawback to Mitch, and probably will always be the drawback, is that he's wildly inaccurate down the field, and he makes really as good of decisions he makes in the short passing game and running the ball. He makes horrible decisions passing the ball down the field. So I'm pretty confident that Nagy knew this coming in and understood his strengths and weaknesses extremely well, which is what he does best as a coach, and he created this weird kind of gadget type of offense that's worked extremely well this season.
Well, it's almost a mirror of what he did last year with Alex Smith.
Yes, I agree.
Even though he did push the ball a little bit more with Alex Smith last year than Alex Smith the rest of his career.
It really is similar. I couldn't agree more with that. I do see a lot of similarities as you look at both of those teams, and it shows you what a great quality coach can do, to a team, almost overnight. It seems like, as you said, they had very similar players on offense from this year to last. So, yeah, and then Chase Daniel is sort of the opposite. He's not nearly as fast, arm movement wise. I know he's got a little bit of a windup, but he is really accurate, and he does make really good decisions, and he's never going to really put you in a bad spot. I've been a fan of his all the way since back in Missouri, where I watched him live and up close a couple of times, and he's quite a good passer. So I do think that I still maintain the fact that he gives them the best chance to win. I'm not quite sure that is supported by many others, and I understand after having already started the season off extremely well that you're of course going to go back to the quarterback that helped get you there. I don't doubt that. I don't think it's the wrong decision per se after you've already gone this route, but as many games as Chase can start and play, he got almost no reps before last week's game as well, and still looked pretty solid. I think that.
Well, let's be fair. It was the Lions.
Yeah, it's
right,
true.
Token.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Why not attack the low-hanging fruit again?
There it is. Why that's why you're here. But no, I do really think that it's a good spot for him, and with some practice time and actually getting first team reps, I think he'll look even better this week. But I still, assuming that Mitch is healthy, no matter how well Chase plays, I'm pretty confident that Mitch will be the starter going forward once he's ready to go.
Yeah, I got to imagine going forward after the Giants, the schedule's actually toughen up for them. I mean, whatever you believe about Green Bay, you can't win on the road, but it is Chicago, so they do get a little extra energy for that game. But you have Los Angeles, Green Bay, San Francisco, and Minnesota. While you have San Francisco, who's not much to write home about, the other three teams are really going to affect how they are in the division. I mean, right now they're 8-3. I think, 8-3. So, I mean, you lose three of those. You lose the Rams, Packers, Vikings games. I mean, now you're staring at 10-6. Does Minnesota come and catch up? As far as 10, or are they 10-4 and it could be 10-5-1 at the end of the year. That tie might matter.
It might, yeah.
Last game of the season is Minnesota.
So right, that's what I'm saying. So, I mean, you're talking about a team 1, 2, 3, 4. They're 6-4-1 right now, or 5-4-1. What are they? 5-4-1.
They just won last week. They played 10 games?
6-4-1.
It should be 11 games, right?
Yeah, 6-4-1. So
yeah.
So if they lose one, they lose to New England this weekend, but then run the table and beat the Bears, and the Bears end up 10-6. They could end up 10-5-1. I mean, it's a tough stretch for the Bears the last 4 or 5. Well, let's not count the Giants game, but even if Chase beats the Giants, you said this earlier, it's got to go back to Mitch when he's healthy, right?
I would think so. I mean, I still believe that Trubisky is definitely the better quarterback and has more to prove, and gives his team a better shot to win and make a potential deep playoff run. So,
all right, what about Lamar Jackson? It looks like Joe Flacco will be missing a third straight game at this point. Baltimore travels to Atlanta, and I know Atlanta's not been very good this year, but Atlanta at home is still a pretty decent team. They're a 1.5-point favorite right now, which, according to Vegas Insider, it opened up Baltimore -3. So you're talking about a 4.5-point line movement at this point across the board. Is this just a product of bettors not trusting Lamar Jackson in his first what you would say his first real test. I mean, he's got a tough schedule ahead too. At Atlanta, at Kansas City, and at Los Angeles, sandwiched in between the Bucs and the Browns. And the Browns aren't a slouch either. They've already beaten Baltimore once this year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see Lamar this week for sure. I know Flacco's getting back on the field of practice, but he's definitely out for this game. It's pretty clear. And, yeah, this game, I believe, true test for Jackson. I think Falcons' defense can potentially slow him down with running, so he might have to rely on the passing, and be interesting to see how competent he is with his passing abilities and creating plays.
Yeah, he hasn't looked all that competent yet as a passer. I don't think it's really much of a shock to anybody that watched him play quite a bit at the previous level. He's a work in progress, and I think he'll be a work in progress for quite a while. If not, maybe never get there. I don't know. It's hard to say. With a man of his type of talent playing the quarterback position, we don't see that very often, and I'm not necessarily sure that's a good or a bad thing. It's just it's interesting. He's had some happy feet certainly in these few games that I've watched. His passes have been relatively inaccurate down the field, and he's hurried. He's hurried a lot of balls too, and that's, I think, the cause for having 3 interceptions already. And I don't see this improving in a quick spot. If he works hard and gets a couple of years under his belt, hopefully without having to start on potentially some rough teams going forward, then maybe he has a chance. But I do think that Joe Flacco is a much better option here still. Although I'm not a huge fan of Joe, as we know, but compared to this, I think they're very fortunate to have won some of these games they have recently. And Lamar just doesn't look all that comfortable there. He just doesn't look like he's ready at all. He looks like a very young quarterback that needs some time.
I imagine this has got to be a must-win for Baltimore, though. I mean, they sit at 6-5 right now. They are a dog to Atlanta, but if they really want to win, if they really want to get into the playoffs, I'm not sure 9-7 is going to do it in their division. It may do it for the 6th seed because, I mean, that's pretty much we talked about that this weekend. That's pretty much the only available spot left if LA continues, the Chargers continue playing well. But, I mean, you have Atlanta, Kansas City, Tampa Bay, the Chargers, and Cleveland.
Ooh.
So, I mean, you're talking about, let's say they lose to Kansas City in Arrowhead. I mean, we can probably pencil that in at this point. So that puts you at 6-6 without the Atlanta game. So you either have to win out at 10-6 against Falcons, Bucks, Chargers, Browns, or at worst you lose to the Chargers and you still have to beat Falcons, Bucks, Browns, which, like I said, you've already lost to the Browns once. Depending on how the Bucks are playing, and then you have this week at Atlanta. Obviously, I think Atlanta's 4-7. They're out of it as far as the playoff race. So what will they be putting on the field at the same time as far as effort? But I mean, I think if they can somehow beat the Chargers and go 10-6, which I know I'm talking about a lot for the Baltimore Ravens, but I feel like this has to be a must-win right now because the only team I can see that I can pretty much pencil in an L is the Chiefs. So that means they've got to win out the rest of the games. Other than that,
yeah, you're absolutely right about that for sure. And I mean, neither of the other games are that easy of games too. I mean, like you said, against the Browns, they already lost the Browns, and it's going to be a tough contest, tough game for Lamar. I'm sure he's going to feel a lot of pressure, and it'd be nice to see him succeed, but time will tell.
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with you guys exactly on this. I think it's a tougher schedule than it might have looked initially. Cleveland's playing extremely well right now. I know that'll be Week 17, so it's kind of always an odd week, but they're playing really well ever since shedding some of that fat, and things look bright there. Obviously, we talked about the Chargers and how good they've been, although that's a Week 16 game, so that is interesting. If the Chargers get into a spot where they're going to be a 5 very, very likely a 5 seed, but can't really win the division. That could be something interesting in that game, despite it being the fact of being on the road. But as you said, yeah, the tough game at Kansas City, and certainly this week. But I only see one kind of for sure win. I don't see them losing at home to Tampa. That Tampa's sort of in free fall, and I don't think that'll be an issue. But it ends up being a really big game, very odd cross conference type of game, but certainly an important one, and I think that Atlanta is probably relatively eliminated at this point. So I don't know how they're going to react to all of this. It's really an interesting game, and as you said, Atlanta's much better at home. I'm just seeing this right now too. So yeah, I don't know how it's going to go.
Well, I would say if you're in the thick of the AFC playoff picture, don't pencil in Chargers just yet. Their remaining games are at Pittsburgh, at Kansas City, at Denver, against the Ravens, and against the Bengals.
Okay, fair enough. So they got a tough road.
They got a tough road ahead of them, so anything is possible, especially with Indianapolis, Baltimore, Miami's still kind of in that mix. Denver's still in that mix. Denver could be, I think Denver's 5-7. I could be wrong about that, but those last two playoff spots, or
Denver is 5-6.
5-6, okay, yeah, 5-7 they can't be because they only played 11 games. Point being is that it's going to be fun down the stretch in that AFC playoff picture, because I'm not so sure that we could even pencil in LA. If LA is able to overcome this and take over Kansas City, then I think we can pencil in that 5 seed, because Kansas City is not going to finish worse than 10-6 in my opinion. So I don't know. We'll see. That'd be interesting. Last couple weeks of the season. Let's talk about the game tonight. And that is New Orleans and Dallas. New Orleans is a 7-point road favorite right now. Opened up at 7, hasn't moved. The total's gone up to 52.5. New Orleans is just firing on all cylinders. Nobody's really given Dallas a chance, even though I believe they've won a few games in a row here as well.
They've won 3 in a row, yeah.
3 in a row, yeah. Let's say after that embarrassing performance on Monday Night Football against Tennessee, they've beaten Philadelphia, Atlanta, and Washington. And actually a lot of their schedule after the Saints gets relatively beatable. I mean, they have Philadelphia again at home. They got to go to Indianapolis, which would be a tough game, but then they got the Bucs and the Giants to finish the season. So, I mean, you're talking about a team that could sneak in here, especially since they're leading the division right now. But even if they don't, they could still sneak in as a wild card.
Okay.
7 points, though. What are you guys thinking about this tonight?
Give me the Saints. I think truly 7 points is fair line for both sides. Saints on defense, I believe, is the difference maker on this, and I believe their secondary will keep Cooper and everybody to minimal downfield plays.
I gotta say, hold on here, but Tony, how do you drink something that you can't read?
No, you gotta have some trust and faith. That's it.
I'm looking at the bottle of what he's drinking. It's green, and it's all in, I'm assuming, Chinese.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, wait, there is some English. Green tea, sugar-free.
There you go. That's all I needed.
That's all you needed to purchase, right?
All I needed, yeah. Just a nice little chilled green tea to start off the day.
There you go. What are your thoughts on this game tonight?
I'm in the camp of token here for the most part. I like Dallas' schedule moving forward. I looked at that earlier as well, and I think this is a game they don't necessarily need, while obviously it would be a huge win, and they're playing extremely well right now. I'm not quite sure anyone can hang with New Orleans at this point. They seem to be on a different cloud than everybody else. But if I'm going to be on a spot here, I'm going to lean on the over at 52. Not a bet I'm necessarily willing to make right now, but I would be on that spot. If I had to bet on the spread for some odd reason, it would be with token there on New Orleans. I just think they're that much better than really virtually anybody else right now.
I don't know. I think it's time for New Orleans to come back to earth. Not saying they're going to lose this game, but I think I'm going to take Dallas. Dallas plays better defense. Whether that matters against the Saints, I don't know. But I just think at some point, I can't imagine this Saints team being 15-1, but based on the schedule, other than the Pittsburgh Steelers, it ain't that hard to do. I mean, they got they got 3 hard games at the end: at Carolina, at Pittsburgh, and home against Carolina. Which Carolina now at 6-5. I think they've lost 3 in a row at this point. Doesn't look like too promising of a matchup, but you can never count out the Carolina Panthers in a division game. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at Tampa. I mean, the only team to beat them this year.
Yeah.
You never know. I don't think this team's won 15-1, but at the same time, I think they can still beat the Dallas Cowboys. Question is, I mean, at some point they're going to clinch here. What are they, 9-1 right now? 10-1? 1, 2.
10-1.
Yeah, 10-1 right now.
But they actually clinch if they win tonight.
Is that so? They clinched yeah, they got to, because 6-5. Well, no, I mean, I guess they wouldn't clinch tonight. They can't officially clinch tonight because Carolina's 6-5 right now. If Carolina won out, they would win the division. So, I don't think they can officially clinch tonight unless Carolina loses this Sunday.
Well, I think they would clinch a wild card at minimum.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they can clinch a playoff. Yeah, playoff spot. Yeah. You're probably right. Yeah. So, I mean, clinching a wild card while it's not the end game, but clinching maybe if Carolina loses this weekend, goes to 6-6, and they beat the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know. I like the Cowboys with a touchdown right here. They're playing hot. I mean, both teams are, but I like the Cowboys defense to be able to shut down the majority of the weapons for the Saints and win this and lose this game probably by about 4 points. I don't know about the total. The total will be tough because if I'm telling you here that Dallas is going to play defense, I'm hoping that defense takes the total under, because the New Orleans defense, I think, is the key here. Is they haven't been playing as well, but they don't need to. They've got an offensive side of the ball that just can outscore everybody, but they have been playing pretty well as well. I mean, they held Philadelphia to 7 points, I think, a couple of weeks ago. Atlanta to 17. The Bengals 14. They gave up a lot to the Rams, but other than that, I mean, the Rams and the Falcons, other than the game they lost against the Bucs, nobody else has really scored over 23 points. So, I mean, they're playing pretty good defense in today's NFL world, I would say.
Yeah, they are. I mean, when you're scoring 40-plus points per game, pretty much, you're probably winning at least 90% of these games, and their defense is actually being pretty productive as well. I mean, averaging
not only that,
right around 22 and change per game.
Not only that, is when you're scoring as fast as New Orleans is, your defense can play one-dimensional football because more than likely the other team is in pass mode at that point. A lot of teams don't get down 28-0 and go, all right, we're going to run the football.
Yeah, absolutely right about that. And that's one thing the Saints would struggle with is if Dallas can get the run game moving to open up passing for Prescott. That might be something to be cautious about.
Zeke's going to be big. Yeah, Zeke's going to have to be an X factor in this one. He's been running pretty well the last couple weeks. If they can't get him going, because they can get him going both running and out of the backfield too. He's a pretty good receiver. So make your pick. You said New Orleans. You're taking the 7?
Yep, New Orleans -7.
You like the over?
I'll take the over.
All right, I'll take Dallas.
I would take the over as well.
All right, we're on a little bit of different.
Nice.
I'll take Dallas, and I'll take the under 52. I'll say it's 27-24 Saints. Just barely. Game-winning field goal by Will Lutz, 61-yarder.
For fantasy purposes.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I have him on my fantasy team anymore, but
I think I do between our league.
Gotcha. So, all right, well, that is going to wrap up our episode here. We appreciate you tuning in. We want to thank the sponsors, VGK Pop Sockets, Chai Poker, and, of course, 12 Ounce Sports Radio for putting us on every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. I want to thank the Tonys, obviously, for being here and giving us all of their wealth of information. I use information in air quotes.
Yes, please do.
But anyways, for Token Tony, for Tony Johnson and myself, we appreciate you listening. We will catch you on the next episode.